Hello. So today I thought it would be fun if I did a deep dive into Iron Maiden's discography, as I recently just finished listening to all their albums. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I just have a lot of opinions that I would like to share about their music, and I thought this video would be a fun outlet of doing it. I'm just going to go chronologically, give my general thoughts on each album, maybe some historical context or something. Also, sorry for the dark lighting. I'm doing this with the lights off, as that light right there is always really distracting when I try to film. So sorry if it's a bit dark. And right there, as you can see, that is my cat. He's probably just gonna be sitting there for a while, so say hi. Anyways, now let's get right into it. So Iron Maiden, as we know them, released their first studio album, which was also self-titled, in 1980. Now, interestingly, I'm sure many people already know this, but this album does not feature Bruce Dickinson on vocals. The band's original vocalist was Paul Di'Anno, who is now deceased, rest in peace. I do think that his voice is interesting. It's much less powerful and anthemic than Bruce's voice, but it does work a little bit for what the album goes for. Their debut has a bit more of like a raw, punkish feel to it. It's like slightly more abrasive and aggressive, I'd say. Not to any, like, it's not like Slayer levels of aggression, but definitely more so than Iron Maiden's later work. A lot of people consider this one of their best, if not their best, depending on who you ask. I don't know if I agree. It's definitely a good album. I do enjoy it, but the unrefined raw production isn't exactly what I look for when I'm listening to Iron Maiden. So as such, I don't really come back to this album that much, but I still do think it's absolutely a good album, and it is a great foundation for this band. So no complaints, it's a good album. Not my personal favorite, but I do see why people would say that. Only 10 months after Iron Maiden's debut, they released their second album, Killers. Now, I think Killers is pretty overlooked. When it comes to this era of the band, people usually only seem to care about either their debut or Number of the Beast onwards. This might be a hot take. I think Killers is kind of just a better version of their debut. It's cleaner and more refined, which I know the unrefinement is part of why people like the debut, but I prefer like the more polished sound on here. It just sounds more Maiden. The choruses are a bit more anthemic. The riffs and solos are just more memorable. Again, I just think that this is their debut, but better. Honestly, if this one had Bruce Dickinson on vocals, it wouldn't be that hard to tell that it was originally recorded without him. But it does not have Bruce Dickinson on vocals, and I still don't think Paul Di'Anno is nearly as good of a vocalist as Bruce Dickinson, so this is another one that I think is good, but not quite great. But again, better than their debut. A really good album that I do revisit quite a bit. Plenty of great tracks on there. Not a great album, like I already said, but definitely a lot of stuff worth checking out on Killers. Pretty overlooked. Oh boy, here is where it really gets good. So, you've already heard me say his name, and I'm assuming if you watch this video, you already know who he is. For their third album, Paul Di'Anno was out, and the band bring in Bruce Dickinson. And I've already glazed him, and I'm gonna glaze him a lot throughout this video, but he is a much better vocalist than Paul. I don't want to disrespect the dead there, but it's kind of just fundamentally Bruce Dickinson blows him out of the water. Like, the amount of projection he has in his voice and like his sustains are so good, and but it's just the Number of the Beast, everything about the band, everything great that they were doing up to this point just came to a complete head. The harmonies are amazing, the riffs are super memorable, the solos have firmly etched them into my brain. There are so many iconic tracks on here, dude, like the title track, Run to the Hills. Hallowed Be Thy Name, I think, is probably the band's best song, even if this isn't quite my favorite album from them. We'll get to that later. But like, even if you got rid of those iconic tracks, you still have stuff like The Prisoner, 22 Acacia Avenue. It's literally all killer, no filler. There are no parts of this album that feel wasted. Even Gangland, which is kind of trashed on for being by far the weakest of the album, is still a really good song. It's just not quite up to snuff with the others. But yes, this album is amazing. Definitely one of the best albums from the early years of metal, and one of Maiden's best albums in general. Like, the jump in quality from their previous two to this one is honestly insane. But there were times when times begins, but on this battlefield no one wins. Iron Maiden continue their hot streak with 1983's Peace of Mind. This is the first album in their catalog that I would not consider a direct upgrade from its predecessor. In fact, I do think this one is quite a lot weaker than Number of the Beast, but like Number of the Beast was so amazing that doesn't really say much because this is still a great album. I do feel like the tone on here is slightly darker than it is on Number of the Beast. Like, it's a bit less upbeat and anthemic and maybe a bit more riff oriented ? They're still very similar sonically, but it is like a difference that I have noticed, I might say. But in general though, this is still a really great Maiden album. Tons of classics on it, like The Trooper is probably their most well-known song, and it's also definitely one of their best songs. I also really like Flight of Icarus, of course. There's a lot of good stuff on here, and it's very consistent, even if it doesn't quite reach the highs of Number of the Beast. But it's still some great 80s metal. One of Maiden's best albums in their catalog, but compared to a lot of their other 80s albums, it is slightly weaker. But again, I want to emphasize, it's still great.
2 minutes to midnight.
And here we arrive at Power Slave. Now, I think that Power Slave is definitely like the fan favorite Maiden album, and it's probably like the general consensus pick for the best Iron Maiden album. I don't know how much I agree with that notion. Now, disclaimer, this album is still great. It's their second best album so far, just behind Number of the Beast, and it's definitely an upgrade from Peace of Mind, so it's still a really great album. But like, I don't know, like the hooks on here don't grab me nearly as much as they do on Number of the Beast, and they definitely start leaning more progressive on here, like their progressive metal tendencies really start showing. But I don't know, it's like, it feels like an awkward middle ground between anthemic catchy Maiden and full-on progressive Maiden, and it doesn't always work out. There are like a couple moments on here that do lose me. But like, again, this is still a really great album. 2 Minutes to Midnight is ridiculously catchy. The opener, Aces High, is great. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, even if I do think it goes on a little bit too long, is still one of Maiden's best 80s songs, definitely. There's a lot of great stuff here. Power Slave is definitely, again, one of Maiden's best albums. One of the best metal albums of the 80s, arguably. I do think it is just a little bit overhyped as like the best Maiden album, though. But again, it's a great album. You really can't go wrong with this era of Maiden, so if you think Power Slave is their best, I will not fight you, even if I don't agree. Somewhere in Time is a slight shift in direction by Iron Maiden. Their last 3 albums, while they definitely have their differences, kind of did just sound like, you know, progressions from each other in a way. I think with Somewhere in Time, Iron Maiden really try to branch out more. For one, they bring in some pretty heavy use of synthesizers, which I know is like a metalhead's worst nightmare, but I think it actually works really well on here. You know, this album's definitely going for that futuristic vibe, pretty obvious given the title and the cover. And I think that, you know, the synths and the keyboards really help to sell that vibe. And in general, I think that this is definitely an upgrade from Power Slave. The riffs on here are really great. The melodies are just, I mean, like that, all of this can apply to any 80s Maiden album, but like the melodies are amazing. They're super catchy. The songwriting is just absolute cinema. I might sound like I'm repeating myself a lot, and I probably am, but like that's just the thing with these 80s Maiden albums. Like, this band's run of albums during this decade was so legendary and so high quality that the only thing to really distinguish between them is personal preference. And Somewhere in Time is probably my 3rd favorite album from the band overall. It's really great. Again, upgrade from Power Slave. I really like the vibes on this one, and it's some of the most ambition that they've shown up to this point. Really great album. Oh boy, so you know how I said that Number of the Beast was my 2nd favorite Iron Maiden album, and Somewhere in Time was my 3rd favorite Iron Maiden album? This is the reason that I said they weren't my favorite. If Power Slave and Somewhere in Time were Iron Maiden kind of like leaning towards their progressive tendencies, this is kind of a full-on dive into them. I don't know if I would say this is a full-on progressive metal album, but it is definitely the most progressive metal that the band have sounded up to this point. It utilizes synthesizers even more than they're utilized on Somewhere in Time, which I know some people hate, but I do think the cheesy synthesizers actually do add a lot. And the guitar melodies on here are definitely some of the band's most memorable. Like the opening part of Only the Good Die Young, or that melody on Moonchild. I mean, like, I can point to like any song and there are some like glorious guitar melodies and harmonies. It's amazing. And this is also definitely their most lyrically ambitious album. It was originally meant to be a concept album focusing around a seventh son of a seventh son, as the album title implies, which is meant to be some sort of like folk tale that a seventh son of a seventh son has like mystical powers, and this album was supposed to be that being's struggles with their powers. From what I can find, they kind of gave up on the concept like halfway through, but it's more than complete enough that you can piece it together, and I think that storytelling really elevates this album above the rest of Maiden's catalog. This album is just straight up amazing. It is definitely Maiden's best album. It is one of the best metal albums of the 1980s. Again, like, it is absolute cinema. If I were to recommend any Iron Maiden album, I would absolutely recommend this one. So, unfortunately, after Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, Iron Maiden's lead guitarist Adrian Smith actually left the band. 2 years later, they put out No Prayer for the Dying, so their first album without Adrian Smith, and this one's definitely controversial among the fan base. I see a lot of people saying like it's mid, it's a huge fall off, they kind of just glaze over it, and don't get me wrong, this is definitely a big step down from the albums before it. But I don't know, I still kind of like this one. I mean, the opening track, Tail Gunner, has one of the most infectious choruses that they've maybe ever written, even if the rest of the song isn't anything special. And the title track, I also think, is a very well written and performed song. I think that in general, a lot of the songs on the first half are at least decent, but it does have some consistency issues later. Specifically, Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter is definitely the worst song that the band have made up to this point. The fact that it's their only UK #1 single is fucking ridiculous. I cannot believe that's a real stat. But in general, even if the rest of Maiden's catalog has been here and this album is here, I mean, here is still pretty good, right? I mean, it's nothing crazy, it's not great, and it's definitely the worst album they've put out so far. But again, I like it, it's enjoyable, sue me. Fear of the Dark is another one that seems pretty polarizing among Iron Maiden's fandom. I see some people saying that it's like a top 3 Iron Maiden album, and I see some people who absolutely cannot fucking stand it, like it's their worst album, all that. I wouldn't specifically agree with either side, but I definitely lean more towards the it's really good group. There's definitely a bit of a shift in songwriting style on here. Like, it's a bit more like bluesy, a bit more like hard rock, you know? And I can see how that would turn people off, but I mean, like, the riffs on here are really good. I really like the riffing style that this album goes for. It's really, like, infectious. And it's not to say that the other aspects of their songwriting have suffered. It's still really catchy all the time. There's still plenty of great solos and all that. But I will say where this album does struggle is a little bit with bloat. This is the longest album that the band have put out so far, at nearly an hour, I believe. That will start a worrying trend that we'll see the band go towards in the future, but let's not worry about that right now. There are definitely some songs that are skips, especially like, again, near like the latter half of the album. There are quite a few songs that I would personally just consider filler. But most of the album is pretty good, and also the title track is amazing. It's definitely one of the band's best songs. I wish the rest of the album was able to maintain that quality, but even if this one isn't quite a great album, it's still a really good album. And I don't think there's any shame in that. Well, as if losing their guitarist Adrian Smith a couple albums earlier wasn't bad enough, after Fear of the Dark, Bruce Dickinson, which was a big part of why all their 80s albums were so good in the first place, left the band. And in their place, they brought in Blaze Bayley. Now, Blaze Bayley is not a bad vocalist, not at all. I honestly think he's pretty good in his own right, but his voice just does not fit Iron Maiden's sound that well. It's a lot lower, more of like a baritone voice, but like that just is completely at odds with like Bruce Dickinson's higher operatic style. But I do think that on their first album with him, The X Factor, they're able to accommodate his sound pretty well. Like there's a bit of a shift here. They definitely try to focus less on those like high operatic anthemic choruses and a bit more on like, again, a songwriting style to accommodate Blaze Bayley's own vocal style. But even still, I don't know, this album is just not that good. First of all, it is way too fucking long. This one is over 70 minutes, and I don't see why it has to be at all. It's just kind of filled with filler. But I don't know, there just really aren't any like impressive solos or engaging harmonies. Like this album, again, it just feels like a bunch of filler. But I will say that the first track, Sign of the Cross, is genuinely a really good song. It's definitely the longest on the album, but I don't know, something about that song just hits my brain just right. It's honestly pretty great. But it does set false hope for the rest of the album, as none of the songs are even near the quality of that one. Overall, I mean, I think the X Factor might be slightly overlooked. I do think it's like passable, but it is definitely the band's first not good album.
What is real? Future real? What is...
Oh boy, I'm sure any Iron Maiden fan already knows how infamous this album is, and I wish I could have a hot take and say that this album actually isn't that bad. You should actually re-listen to it. It's pretty good, but I'd be lying to myself. This album is bad. You know how I said with the X Factor that they like changed their songwriting style slightly to better accommodate Blaze Bayley's voice? They don't do that on here. They just go right back to the songwriting from their Bruce Dickinson days and expect Blaze Bayley to be able to match it. And again, Blaze Bayley is not a bad vocalist, but he is not Bruce Dickinson. His vocal delivery on here sounds so awkward because he's trying to match these like high anthemic operatic choruses, and that's just not what his voice was built for. And I'm not gonna lie, that is a big part of why this album just falls completely flat. The vocal delivery is so awkward and it really takes you out of the experience. But even if we ignore the vocals, I don't know, it doesn't even sound like they tried with this album. It feels so lazy. Like the riffs, there's no interesting riffs. The solos are just complete useless. They don't serve any purpose. The production is honestly pretty bad. Like genuinely, their very first album had better production than this one. I don't know, just nothing really went right with this album. It's not like awful, but it is definitely a bad album, and I would say it is the band's only like outright bad album. It is a shame that a band who released such highs like Number of the Beast and Seventh Son were able to make a low this low.
Out of the silent planet, dreams of desolation.
So thankfully, after the disappointment, to say the least, that the X Factor and Virtual 11 were, Bruce Dickinson finally decided to come back to the band, and so did, probably just as notably, Adrian Smith, who hasn't been here since Seventh Son. And also interestingly, the band still kept their guitarist that they used to replace Adrian Smith. So they were now a 3-guitar band, which is fucking awesome. But pretty much like the classic lineup were pretty much completely back together. And they released Brave New World in 2000, and God, this is such a good fucking album. I mean, you can just immediately tell from the very first riff on the very first track. They have that fire back, like they're energetic again. They're excited to be making music. With the Blaze Bayley album, it sounded like they were just biding their time until Bruce Dickinson or Adrian Smith came back. But on here, they sound explosive again. I also think that Bruce Dickinson does sound better than he did on Fear of the Dark or No Prayer for the Dying. I didn't mention it, but on those albums, his vocals felt a little off, but on here, he is back in complete full force. And I also think that they did a great job of modernizing their production on here. Like the production, it sounds clean and polished, but not like overly compressed or lifeless. It maintains the spark of Iron Maiden's sound, just with a more modern sheen. I think they did that extremely well. But yeah, this is definitely one of the best metal reunion or metal comeback albums out there. It's remarkable how well this actually worked. This is a great album. It is definitely their best since the 1980s. I would definitely recommend it. I wouldn't personally say it's better than any of their Bruce Dickinson era 80s albums, but I definitely see why someone would think that. This is definitely a highlight in their catalog. All that praise being said, you know how I kept saying that Iron Maiden would lean towards longer runtimes earlier? This leans a bit too far in that direction. This is almost 70 minutes long, which isn't like egregious, but there are a lot of places that could use some trimming. This definitely would have been better if it was like 50-ish minutes rather than over an hour. But as it is, it's still a great album. Not really many complaints. Definitely worth checking out. I think it's fair to be concerned that Brave New World would be a little bit of just a one and done explosive comeback and that they wouldn't be able to maintain that momentum. But strangely enough, they were able to maintain that momentum. Dance of Death is notorious for the fucking awful cover art, but I really urge you to look past how bad the album cover is, because the music itself is actually still really good. It's definitely a lot less consistent than Brave New World is. Like, there is quite a bit of filler on here, but the highs are extremely impressive. Rainmaker is probably their best post-1980s song, maybe. And Montsegur is probably the heaviest the band have ever sounded. Passchendaele is one of their best written songs in a while, and I really like the fully acoustic closer Journeyman. As far as I know, I'm pretty sure that's their only like fully acoustic song. It's really cool. But like I said, it's not super consistent. There are a couple songs that are just kind of snooze fests, and like Brave New World, this is a little bloated. There are a couple songs that are just a couple minutes longer than they need to be, and the album would be much better if it was, again, 50 or so minutes. But I still think this is a really good album. It's pretty overlooked, but again, if you can look past the atrocious cover art, this is definitely one that's worth diving into.
Tell me what you can hear, and then tell me what you see. Everybody.
I think at this point, it's fair to consider this era a renaissance for Iron Maiden, as A Matter of Life and Death is the third consecutive good album that they've made, which is pretty impressive for a band this old. I think that this album, specifically the first half, is some of the most consistently great that this band have been in a while. Like, if you just took the first 6 tracks of this album, it would definitely be on the same level and probably higher than Brave New World. The problem is, though, the album does not end after the first 6 tracks, and the tracks after that are still really good. The problem that I mentioned with song lengths and the album lengths with the last 2 albums really starts to drag on here. Like, there are so many songs that are like 9 minutes that could easily be like 5, and the album, again, it's over 70 minutes, and it could easily be like 40 to 50, and if it was 40 to 50, it would be a lot more enjoyable. But again, like, it's still like the high points on here are really high, and it's still able to maintain those highs throughout the album, even if it gets a little more tedious as it goes on. I would say this is probably a slight improvement from Dance of Death, maybe, depending on how I'm feeling, but yeah, this is legitimately a really good album. Bloated, yeah, but some strong ass material from a band on their 14th studio album. Well, I did call the last few Iron Maiden albums a bit of a renaissance, but if that was a renaissance, I think the renaissance kind of ended here. The Final Frontier is just not a very engaging album in my opinion. El Dorado is a good song, definitely the one I revisit the most from this album, but everything else, I don't know, this just doesn't grab me. The production has taken a pretty big hit since A Matter of Life and Death. Like, a lot of the punchiness and energy feels like it's just gone. Like, it's kind of weird how not well produced this one is. And also, I do think that this is where you start to notice Bruce Dickinson's age starting to show through a little bit. Not a lot, but you can definitely tell, like, oh yeah, this guy is definitely getting on in years. I don't know how much longer he can really keep doing this. The Final Frontier is fine. It's okay. It's like a perfectly average album, but it just doesn't really excite me. And like I've said with their last several, this is just way too long. 73 minutes is kind of ridiculous for what this album actually offers. Like, even if this was only 40 minutes long, it would still be one of the band's weakest. But again, it's fine. it's like a 6 out of 10 album. But if they were going through a renaissance, this kind of ended that renaissance.
Shadows and the stars, we will not return.
So I'm assuming you've definitely noticed by now that ever since Brave New World, maybe since the X Factor, I've always mentioned how Iron Maiden albums have just felt way too long. I really do feel like that the band just need to go back to writing 40-minute catchy banger albums, you know, like they did it back in the 80s. Well, instead of doing that, you know what they do? They release a fucking double album. Look, I have absolutely nothing against the occasional Iron Maiden epic. A lot of the band's like 10+ minute songs are definitely among their best. But when half of your album consists of those 10+ minute epics, they feel a lot less epic and it can get pretty tedious pretty fast. It also makes those epic moments feel a lot less earned. Like the final track, Empire of Clouds, tries so hard to be this big dramatic climax, but when we've already had like 4 other big dramatic climaxes, it really just doesn't hit the same. But that's not to say that this is a bad album, because it's definitely not. Speed of Light is a very good track and is definitely the closest we've gotten to a classic Maiden banger in a long time. And the title track I also think is a particular highlight. I really like the storytelling on that one. But like, these guys really need to learn that more does not equal better. This album is 92 minutes long. That's longer than some movies, and it does not earn it. This could have easily been 30 minutes even. I feel like there's only 30 to 40 minutes of like truly good material in here. The rest of it is just filler. I don't know. This one's probably a bit better than the Final Frontier, I would say, just because the highs are definitely higher, but it's so damn bloated. A lot of people seem to consider this one of the band's best modern albums, and I just cannot agree. It's still fine. It's average. It's passable. It's maybe even decent. But again, more does not equal better, and that is a lesson that these guys desperately need to learn. So, as of me recording and uploading this video, Senjutsu is the latest album by Iron Maiden, released in 2021. And, man, you kind of just have to take my complaints about the Book of Souls and amplify them. I will say that this album is shorter. It's only 81 minutes rather than 92 minutes, but still, 81 minutes. No Iron Maiden album needs to be that long. And like I said with the last one, like when you have so many of these big climactic epics, none of them feel earned. And the songwriting on here just isn't able to support the weight of all that material. So many of the songs on here just feel like 10 minutes of mid-tempo guitar noodling. And Bruce Dickinson's vocals don't save it either, because he sounds pretty bad on here. Like, his voice is so like strained. It feels like it hurts for him to sing. You can hear how old he is, and that's not a good thing. I don't know. I feel like I'm being a little harsh on this album. On their own, most of the songs are at least like decent, but hearing just decent for this long really starts to get tedious. And there's also like so many background synths on this album, and I praised their use of synthesizers on a lot of earlier albums, but they just feel out of place and distracting on here. Like, I don't know why there needed to be those like droning synths in the background of every single song. I don't know. This one is okay. It's, again, I like with the last 2 albums, it's not bad. I'd say it's fine overall, but I'd say this is pretty easily the worst album with Bruce Dickinson behind the wheel. At the very least, though, the cover art fucking slaps. I especially like the 3D metallic logo, so at least it has that going for it. But yeah, again, this is definitely the worst Bruce Dickinson Iron Maiden album, even if it's not like bad. Alright, so now that we've gone through Iron Maiden's entire discography, I'm going to sort them all in this here tier list. I am using my laptop webcam and microphone instead of my phone, so I probably look and sound quite a bit worse. Sorry, this is the easiest way for me to do it. And also, this is going to be based entirely on my personal opinion. I'm not going to try to be like general consensus here. This is just based on what I think. You might disagree. Too bad. Alright, let's just get right into it. Iron Maiden, the debut. A lot of hardcore Maiden fans would probably put this in A or even S tier. I'm gonna go B. A lot of people might yell at me for that. Again, it's good. I definitely respect it. I just don't come back to it as much as I would probably like to. And then Killers, like I said, I think this is just a slightly better version of their debut. It's more refined, it's more catchy, it's more of what you would expect from the band. A lot of people, again, I assume a lot of people would put debut over Killers. I'm going the other way. Killers over debut all day. Number of the Beast, there is no contest. This goes straight into S tier. There's no argument for any other tier. One of the most iconic metal albums of all time. Banger after banger after banger after banger. Contains probably their best song in Hallowed Be Thy Name. Again, like the jump in quality from these two to this one is honestly pretty insane. Peace of Mind, like I said, this one's a fall off, but it's not a huge fall off. So I think I'm gonna put it in A tier. It's a great album. It's just not Number of the Beast level, but again, plenty of great songs, and it's very consistent. I don't think there's any shame in being lesser than Number of the Beast, because a lot of things are. Power Slave, I think I'm also going to put in A tier, just above Peace of Mind. A lot of people are going to shank me for not putting it in S tier, but again, I think it's just a little overrated. I definitely think that they have better written albums, catchier albums, more progressive albums, more epic albums, but it's still a Maiden classic, one of their best for sure. I just don't think it's quite S tier material, but it is on the edge. Somewhere in Time, ooh, I'm a bit caught between like a low S tier or a high A tier. I think I'm gonna say high A tier for now, but yeah, this one is excellent. It is again, probably the most progressive they sounded up to that point. I love the synths. I love the cold, futuristic atmosphere. Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. You already know that this is going straight to the top of S tier. This is just the absolute best thing that Iron Maiden have done in every way. It's like their most epic. It's their catchiest. I really like the synths. It has their most ambitious lyrical content. S tier, no question, no competition. No Prayer for the Dying. A lot of people would probably want to put this lower, but again, I enjoy it. I definitely recognize that it is flawed, but I think like a low end of B tier makes sense. It's not perfect, but I still like it. Fear of the Dark. Like I said, this one's pretty polarizing. I know a lot of people who would put this in D and F, and I know a lot of people who would put this in like A and S. I lean a bit more towards the middle. I'd put it in like high B tier. Now the question is, do I like it more than Killers or not? I'm probably going to have Killers above it for now. That could change based on how I'm feeling that day, but this feels slightly better to me. Now the X Factor. This one is slightly overlooked, but mainly just because Sign of the Cross is a really good song. Everything else is just skippable. I don't know. It's either a high D or a low C. I think I'm gonna go C for now. That it could be in D, but I'm feeling nice. I'm putting it in C. Virtual 11, F tier. I don't think I need much of an explanation. It just sounds like they couldn't even bother to give a shit with this one. It's bad. It's just bad. Now, Brave New World, like I said, this is one of the best metal comeback albums out there. Definitely their best since the 80s. I'm putting that in A tier, probably below Peace of Mind. It could be above. It could be above. I think I feel slightly better about below, but again, definitely A tier album. It's great. Dance of Death, that is going in B tier, I would say, probably between Debut and Fear of the Dark. It could maybe be above Fear of the Dark, but I don't know. That feels a bit better to me. Horrendous artwork, but good album. A Matter of Life and Death. Ooh, I think I'm putting this at the very top of B tier. Maybe it could be a very low A tier, but it's just too bloated for me to say that it's truly great. But I do think that out of all of these albums and below, it is the best one. The Final Frontier, you already heard me say it, I just wasn't really feeling this one. It just feels like kind of a downgrade in every way. Nothing about it really sticks out, so I think C tier is fair. Definitely above the X Factor, but it's not that good of an album. The Book of Souls, it's 92-minute album with 40 minutes of good material. A bit better than The Final Frontier, a little bit, but still does not need to be as long as it is. And Senjutsu, yeah, you already know, I think this is definitely the worst Bruce Dickinson album. Is it worse than the X Factor? A lot of people would probably say fuck no. I think it's an argument. I think it's arguably worse than the X Factor. I think the X Factor has like higher highs, basically, as in, again, Sign of the Cross is really good. But Senjutsu is probably more consistent, so I think I'll keep Senjutsu above it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that just about finishes up my tier list. If you wanted to go like a bit nicer, like this would be my maybe potential tier list. But I think that I'm comfortable with this being my set in stone tier list. So from worst to best, my Iron Maiden ranking is Virtual 11, The X Factor, Senjutsu, The Final Frontier, The Book of Souls, No Prayer for the Dying, Debut, Dance of Death, Fear of the Dark, Killers, A Matter of Life and Death, Brave New World, Peace of Mind, Power Slave, Somewhere in Time, Number of the Beast, and finally at the tippy top, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. I don't think there's much else to say. We went through all their albums, we did the tier list. I don't really know how to end this. Bye.